Was the gospel message of the deity, death, and resurrection of Jesus proclaimed immediately after the crucifixion?
Yeah. I mean, there's almost like no way to get a wedge in there between what was said and how soon it was. Critics today, let's put it this way. I'll use a real strong word. Consensus. The consensus New Testament position. You go, are you an atheist New Testament scholar? Yep. Are you an agnostic? Yeah. Are you skeptical? Oh, yeah, I'm real skeptical. Are you a Jewish New Testament scholar with credentials in New Testament, but you're not a Christian? Yep. What did they all agree to? It was early. The consensus view is that these earliest proclamation of the deity, death, resurrection could not have been more than right after the crucifixion. Some people start at the same year, because crucifixion would have been in the spring. You got 9 whole months to get this thing in before the year's over. Other people would say by the time Paul went to Damascus at +1, 2, or 3 after the cross. 2 is a nice round number. 3 is easy. If Paul's converted, Ehrman says that all these things could have been in existence while he was walking to Damascus. The creeds were already there. Now, by the way, early. Now, here's a critic comeback. And there's some force to this unless you don't know what you're talking about, which I usually don't. But the critics will go, oh, for crying out loud. What you're telling me is that they spread propaganda at a very early date. Yeah, here's where you know it's not propaganda. When Paul was converted at +1, 2, or 3, let's say +2, +3, he's converted. 3 years later, he goes up to Jerusalem, Galatians 1. Oh, yeah, well, now you believe in Galatians 1. Well, guess what? Every critical scholar allows Galatians 1. Every critic allows Galatians 1, the whole book of Galatians. No one's going to argue. Paul goes up there and for 15 days interviews Peter and James, the brother of Jesus. 15 days. What's the theme of the book of Galatians? The gospel. Okay, so how would you summarize the book of Galatians? It goes like this. It's about the gospel. The deity, death, resurrection of Jesus minimum. Make it bigger, it's heresy. Make it smaller, heresy. Get it right. Deity, death, resurrection. And what did you do about it? I went up to Jerusalem and interviewed those who were disciples ahead of me. In fact, Galatians chapter 1, verse 18 uses the Greek word hysteresis. That's the word Paul chose for what he did with these 2 disciples, Peter and James. Hysteresis means to interview, to question, to dialogue. And I know if I were Paul, here's my first question. I'll tell you guys what I saw on the way to Damascus. If you guys tell me what you saw on Easter Sunday morning when Jesus was raised from the dead. Now, I'm come lately. I wasn't here for the other appearances, guys. That's why I need to hear your testimonies. So if someone says, yeah, very early propaganda, here's the problem. You got Paul the persecutor, who now believes because he thinks he saw the risen Jesus. He goes to Jerusalem to interview the 2 best known of the previous group of apostles, Peter and James. Later, he goes back in Galatians 2. He makes another trip, all before the first New Testament book is written. He goes back, and now John is the so-called Big Four. There's Paul, Peter, James, the brother of Jesus, and John. They're all there. What's the theme of the book again? Oh, yeah, the gospel. Get it right. So what's he doing? They're talking about the gospel. Nobody thinks that Paul did not hear about their appearances. In fact, after Paul says in Galatians 2:2, I set before them the gospel I was preaching to see if I was running or had run in vain. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Right after he says it, he says the other apostles, the disciples, they added nothing to me. In English, 5 words. They added nothing to me. That means we agree. And just a few verses later, chapter 2, verse 9, they give Paul and Barnabas the right hand of fellowship. You don't give the right hand of fellowship to heretics. So they gave them the right hand of fellowship because they believed their message. So when someone goes, yeah, early propaganda, early baloney, yeah, except that A, Paul saw the risen Jesus, B, was willing to die for it, C, finally did die for it, interviewed Peter and James, for whom we have first century attestation, extra-biblical attestation for their martyrdoms. James, the brother of Jesus, reported by Josephus. Paul's too, in the first century, reported. So, they report this, and so he's that serious. Paul's converted. Peter gets his life straightened out after, denying Jesus. After his apostasy, one recent writer says. I think that's a little strong, but he said Peter, after Peter's apostasy, he comes back. James wasn't a believer, apparently. James comes back. James comes to the Lord. They all come to the Lord, but he interviewed them right there at the beginning. That's not hearsay. That's not baloney. Paul interviewed them, and then he went back and did it again. Paul is a first-century researcher. Oh, and by the way, he identifies himself as a Pharisee. What did the Pharisees do? One of the things Josephus tells us, Josephus, by the way, was a Pharisee, and Josephus tells us one of the things Pharisees are known for is repeating their information. Well, Paul is repeating the information that he already researched and gathered. So you can make fun of it, you can say whatever you want, but there's nothing like this in religion. Paul Barnett, the Australian historian, says there is no argument like this in any religion or in ancient history that has this tight of a connection between data gathering and proclamation. It's right there from the beginning.